Welcome to Fantasy Football for Everyone with Alex, Art, and Dave.
What's going on, everybody? This is Alex.
And this is Art.
This is Dave.
This is Fantasy Football for Everyone, the Pint Sized Pod, episode 2. We're doing the F4E the Fantasy Football for Everyone Invitational Draft recap. We also got a really big announcement. We hosted, as all of our listeners know, a mock draft battle for 2026 off a mock draft we did a bunch of our buddies back in, I think, July. For the finals, we were offering, sponsored by Rippin' and Flippin'. Follow Rippin' and Flippin', Rippin_Flippin 26 on Instagram. And they sponsored us with a 2025 Topps Chrome Jahmyr Gibbs X-Fractor card for a winner that voted on the poll. So, Art, take it away. That's what we have going on. And then we got to spin the wheel to see who the winner is.
Look, it's a phenomenal card. It's a card every collector wants. It is not an entry-level card. It is a card that, again, every collector wants, especially with Jahmyr Gibbs. We hyped it up going into the pod season, and I'm really, really jacked about it. So we got to see what happens.
We're about to see what happens. Art, I should ask you this pre-pod, but is Matt Davenport, that's not Matty, is it?
No, different Matt. That's my buddy Matt. I know a lot of Matts.
Oh, that's a different Matt.
Crazy.
There's a huge amount of Matts in Pittsburgh. But another Matt, but I have the wheel here, whoever can see. We ready, guys? Boom.
Love it. Let's see it.
In. Who won? Jimmy Lee. Who is Jimmy Lee? Do we know Jimmy Lee?
Yeah, Jimmy Perkins.
Yeah, let's go.
That's my buddy.
Well, Jimmy, you win the 2025 top
Jimmy
card.
Jam.
Jimmy Lee.
Jimmy Lee.
Jimmy.
Look at this guy. Paula was up for the vote, too.
Yes.
She voted. She was up for the card.
Yeah, I love it.
So, no, this is great. Thank you, everybody that voted.
All kinds of love coming from all of our people.
The mock draft battle was a lot of fun. So stay tuned. We're gonna have a lot more giveaways for our listeners, for people that are fans of Rippin' and Flippin', that follow Rippin' and Flippin', follow us on Instagram, on YouTube, all of the socials where we're available. But guys, I mean, let's get into meat and potatoes. This is a pint-sized pod about the F4E draft and the recap and where the teams stand nowadays. So I guess, kicking it off, Dave, kind of left you out so far. What were your opinions on the draft, and how do you think this season is going to go, especially the start of a dynasty?
Number one, man, fantastic group of guys. Obviously, we had the side chat going. Everybody was engaged. You know, we went long draft format, not knowing exactly what we were getting ourselves into here with the startup, and we knocked it out in 3 days. So, there might have been a benefit to us waiting a little bit longer with the way these people are dropping in training camp, but fantastic draft. Everybody was engaged. And I'll tell you what, man, as you pour through these rosters, you see a lot of different team builds. Nobody that's the clear leader of the pack. I mean, I just think it was a fantastic draft. Everybody's got a team that's real interesting to look at. Nobody with an insane amount of depth, unless a couple of their guys hit, and that's always going to happen. But
Yep.
I'm excited to see how it plays out, man, because I think this is very tight. You look at this first week of point projections, and I don't think there's much more than a swing of about 7 points from the top team to the bottom team. So pretty pumped to see how we start going here.
I mean, and, let's not forget that my team does have the highest point projections in week 1. But it's not about that right now. It's about the league. But, Art, so have you heard anything from your guys? How did they enjoy the draft? What were your thoughts about the outcome?
You know what? My guys really enjoyed the process. I think, between Matt being an absolute veteran in the fantasy football world, everybody knows Matt is the gamer of the bunch. And with Tommy and Stefan, they were just so happy to be a part of it. Like genuine, adult happiness to just be a part of something really cool. So I can't be super corny about it, but I mean, that is kind of my shtick, but really my guys are jazzed up to be in it. I do feel like I didn't give them quite as much knowledge as I needed to going into the draft. We drafted in a very busy week of life for me, but I mean, it simply is what it is. So my guys probably paid the price in the first couple rounds, but they did draft monster squads. And I'm sure the outcome from this year will lead very well into next year. So yeah, fortunate to have good people around me and around us. So Dave's right. Hell of a league, great guys.
No, I completely agree with you both. I think we put a really good group of guys together. Guys that are excited for the league, are excited to be part of the pod. And that's something I'm sure everybody in the league's listening right now, but that's something we're going to have you guys on the show. We're going to bring you in for segments. We're going to keep the content fresh, keep it different, keep it interesting, razz each other up a little bit. And that's going to be a lot of fun. But let's look at the teams right now. So we are looking at this through Fantasy Calc, just kind of the outcome of the teams when it comes to Dynasty. Fantasy Calc is really cool. Like, obviously don't want to give away free plugs, but it does break down Dynasty based on point value, has your picks in there. And right down the list, we got, our boy Dave at number 1. He's leading with his quarterbacks, his tight ends, 55% chance to make the playoffs right now. Then we got Shorty with 51%. He's leading with the running backs, ranked number 1. And again, tight ends, he's number 4. He was actually got a little crazy and hit 2 tight ends, 2 rounds back to back. What'd you think about that, Dave? Were you expecting something like that coming at Shorty?
Listen, I love when somebody's a disruptor. I've known Shorty to do similar things in the past, man. He always looks at the game a little bit of a different way. But important to remember, we have that tight end premium scoring. The top 4 guys went early, and then I think everybody sort of thought, I'm going to wait on this until the run starts. And then Shorty became the one-man run. Drafting out of that 2-hole, I believe it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 6th and 7th round. So Shorty takes Sam Laporta on the comeback, and then 2 picks later takes Tucker Kraft. And I think at that point the draft kind of said collectively we're going to let these guys free fall. And Shorty said, "You waited a little too long. Full point PPR for these guys. I see potential for one of these guys in my flex, both young tight ends that could be on the squad and be a cornerstone for a long time." So, he grabs those guys at the 6-7 turn, and then we see 3 more tight ends finally go in that 7th round. And, then another one in the 8th, 1 in the 9th, 2 in the 10th. So that really was the beginning of people going, okay, I got to address the position and I can't just wait on this forever. But I love the guy that throws a monkey wrench, man. That's what keeps it interesting, right?
No, you're absolutely right, Dave. And that came completely out of left field. We were kind of talking about it on the side, I can't believe more tight ends haven't gone. I think I was actually at this moment busting Shorty's balls about taking Sam Laporta over Tucker Kraft. And he was like, I know what I'm doing. He let Kraft come back to him. And then we saw in the 7th round, after Kraft came off the board, 3 more tight ends, Kyle Pitts, Harold Fannin, Isaiah Likely at the 7-11 spot to Arts boy Stevie Stefan. So no, that was very interesting. I really appreciate that pick. And then let's talk about Arts boy Matt in the 3 spot. He has the highest percentage chance to make the playoffs at 63%. He ate at running back, being a top 3 running back squad, and at wide receiver, having the 2nd best receivers in this league. And I'm going to talk about what I like about Matt's team a little bit later in the pod, a quick teaser. But Art, what do you think about Matt's build? Have you talked to him about it? What was his vibe, and what did you think about his draft?
Yeah, he really is mostly happy with his draft. I don't think he's married to any team he's ever drafted, right? He's done this too many times to just be blindly, yeah, this is the best draft I've ever done. He will never say something like that. But that is why I'm tied to Matt in my highest stakes money league.
Wow.
It just is, right? When you co-own leagues where it's a big buy-in, there's some cheddar involved, you want to be with somebody who has great instincts, and Matt certainly has that. So there's no surprise that he has the highest odds of advancing to the playoffs.
Guys, how do we feel about that? And remind me, Alex, what did you say? 2nd overall running back there. What do we think of? Was it 2nd or 3rd, you said, his running back?
His running backs are 3rd. And his running backs consist of Saquon Barkley, who he drafted in the 4th. Then he came back into Bucky in the 5th. On the quick turn, DeAndre Swift in the 8th. And then Charbonnet in the 11th. With Ramondre in the 12th. And then he has keeps rising up the draft boards, Mike Washington in the 16th round. So, yeah, he tore it up at running back.
Yeah, and on a day, obviously, where we get the Ashton Genty news, that undisclosed knee injury, you love looking at Mike Washington on your Dynasty startup bench. But honestly, man, for my money, when I look through this league and see some of the other running back pairings that are out there, I don't know that I had that as a clear top 3 backfield for me. People may feel differently, but There were a couple squads out there. Obviously, we had I think your boy Ryan with James Cook, Javonte Williams, Derrick Henry, David Montgomery. I felt like that was a really solid backfield and
Yep.
incredibly deep. I guess there were some other maybe with some high end talent that I liked. He definitely had a deep backfield. But I don't know, man. Barkley, I don't know how many seasons he's got left. Bucky, I think there's a ton of question marks around. I like Swift. I think Charbonnet could be nice down the stretch. But, when you're looking at some other, especially in dynasty backfields, like a Ken Walker, Jadarian Price, with Rico Dowdle and Jordan Mason in there, who I think are viable. You're looking at guys putting together Jonathan Taylor, Devon A-Chain. There were some backfields that I thought I wouldn't mind having on my roster a little more than that one, personally.
Yeah. Yeah. And Dave, I completely understand, tie it all together. Stefan's team with the A-Chain Taylor stack, he's ranked at 5th. And then Jeff Jackpot, who has the Kenneth Walker, Jadarian Price, Rico Dowdle. He's actually
Ken
ranked
Walker, Jadarian Price, Dowdle,
Mason, White, yeah.
Yeah.
So no, we'll see how they, we'll see.
Dynasty's
interesting. The point fluctuation changes like from right now day to day. So it's really funny to see how that plays out. But no, I would not mind having like the depth that Matt has. I think that's a lot of what the equation looks like. But to keep it moving, number 4 was my boy,
it goes
Ryan, who's ranked 4th in Dynasty, but only has a 47% chance of making the playoffs this year. He does lead the league in quarterback rankings at number 1. He went early on quarterback at 1.1, taking Josh Allen, and then coming back at the 212, taking Trevor Lawrence before he snagged James Cook as the other pick of that turn, where he ended up as number 2 running backs, number 8 receivers, and he really waited on tight end and is last place at tight end. And that's solely because his lone tight end is George Kittle, but George Kittle got activated off the PUP today, so that might rise up. I'm sure just the depth is going to be the only thing that keeps him with the lower ranking, but he had a good draft. I mean, I always know this guy's going to draft well, and he's also, all right, if you want to trade with somebody, if you're a little trade salty right now, I would hit a Boyle. He's always down to trade. So just a little heads up.
Okay, we can do that.
Yeah. All right, I'm at number 5.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Go ahead, Dave.
No, we're good. I wasn't sure what he had done since the draft at tight end, and I knew Kittle coming out of the draft was his only tight end. So that was a little bit of a question mark for me. I mean, I think grabbing Kittle where he grabbed him is a fantastic pickup, but you got to have something in the chamber there, because you don't know exactly what you're getting, even if he gets on the field. How healthy is he? So, but it looks like he's gone and picked up Brenton Strange. So young tight end there that could grow into an offense and have some opportunity. Not terrible there.
No, not bad at all. Yours truly, Darth Kampke, myself, I at number 5, 55% chance to make playoffs. Waited on quarterback. I'll talk about when we talk about strategies a little bit of why I held off on quarterbacks and who I got. I'm also ranked 10th in running backs, which I also held off on to create an edge at wide receiver, which I'm ranked 3rd, and tight end, which I'm ranked 2nd. So we'll see how that pans out. But like I said, top projected score week 1. So hopefully that keeps going. And yeah, us three, me and 2 of my guys kind of had me sandwiched in the middle here with Muckin at number 6. 48% playoff chance this year. Youngest team in the league at 24.9, but he's already dealing with some injury issues. Quarterbacks ranked 10th, running backs ranked 4th, wide receiver 7th, and he has the best tight ends in the league. He has Jahmyr Gibbs, he has Breece Hall. They really waited with Tyler Algier, who actually might be a really solid running back 3 this year, but Justice Hill, George Helani are his 4 running backs, but then he has Drake London, but he has Jordan Tyson they drafted in the 6th round, and that's really hurting right now. And then Jaden Higgins in the 9th round. So he's left at Omar Cooper, Jaden Reed, Jalen Coker, Cyrus Allen, but yeah. And then Chris Brazzle, he went for the Brazzle, and the IR spot is his last wide receiver, so he's really short on receivers right now. Dave, have you seen him pick up any receivers, kind of help him fill that void, as he has a couple on IR and PUP right now?
No, I honestly haven't seen what he's done, man. But this is where you do look at these guys like Cyrus Allen and you go, hey, maybe Cyrus Allen is a guy that I'll be able to play with in the first few weeks. Now, we haven't heard good things about Omar Cooper, but he did get thin fast, man. I like having Drake London as that sort of linchpin guy. I think for where he grabbed him in the 3rd round, that was one of the very good value in a startup, but he will be looking, man. But he did grab, one or two young guys that you think, hey, here's hoping he can do something early.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So yeah,
Jordan
poor
Tyson
Muck.
and Jaden Higgins in the same week hurts, though,
It's
doesn't it?
rough. It's rough. I mean, we were texting about it. He said he won a bunch of championships last year, so he's
Yeah.
cool with it. So yeah, kind of just build and good draft in 2027. But Art next, Tommy. Tommy was really locked in for the draft. He kept everything going. Really liked his team. 54% playoff odds. Walked away with the number one receivers ranked in the league, but really, kind of struggling at running back and tight end at 11, mid-tier quarterbacks at 6. So what have you heard from Tommy? What do you think about his draft, Art?
I haven't had a chance to catch up with Tommy in a couple weeks, so I haven't had time to review kind of where his head's at. But I think you're right. I mean, really strong at wide receiver, and unfortunately, a lot like myself, strong at wide receiver, weak at running back. So there's not a whole lot of room for me to try to wheel and deal with Tommy, unless he's had a few too many White Claws one night. And if that's the case, I'm hitting him up for some trades.
No, I love that. And to kind of talk about Tommy, why Tommy's the top ranked receiver team right now. He drafted JSN first at 1.7. He came back in the 4th round, filled his team with kind of a balanced team with Jalen Hurts in the 2nd, CMC in the 3rd, which isn't bad. We just got to see if he stays healthy. Definitely not good for Dynasty. Not great for Dynasty, I should say. He got Buka. He did snipe, I should say, with the Cam Ward pick in the 5th round. I think I definitely have my eye on him. I think Dave might have had his eye on him too. Josh Jacobs in the 6th. Then he got Jalen Waddle to finish out his starting roster. Went really young from there. Mekhi Lemon, Denzel Boston, DeJon Stribling, 3 really talented rookie receivers. And then he still has Jalen Warren as running back 3. But yeah, I can see he has Shedeur Sanders as his quarterback 3. So I can definitely see where he's kind of struggling that aspect. But then Art, you're coming at number 8 with the lowest playoff percentage outcome, 35%. You do have the 3rd ranked quarterbacks in the league and the 4th ranked receivers, so I feel like that's kind of rude from Fantasy Calculator, but you do have the worst ranked running backs in the league. So kind of give us before getting too much into it, because we are going to talk strategy, but kind of give us how that makes you feel, I guess, is my question.
Yeah, look, it's very simple. America loves a comeback story. I know the weaknesses at running back are evident, but I was certainly not going to come out of this draft without a few players. And the few players that I really was looking to have, and it's all honesty, so I really wanted to see if Malik Neighbors could blow up. I think it got him at good value because everyone's afraid of Jackson Dart. Yeah, I know Jackson Dart. Yeah, got it. I know. I'm not loving that either, but of the players I really wanted to with, and the stack, yes, I really wanted to leave the draft with Tyler Warren. Okay. I really wanted to leave the draft with some consistency in T. Higgins, and I think the ceiling for Travion Henderson is really considerable. On top of that, I really wanted to have a bench that could be one that could help me out in a pinch. And when we look at the preseason rankings, it's very rare that in any team I draft, it's very rare that I'm ever in the top 3 of, oh, look, you're going to do great this season. Somehow I still finish in the top 4 of most leagues I'm in. So take that, what you will. But when it comes down to it, I picked with potential. And if I'm going to say anything else, Jalen McMillan on my bench, Jeremy McBernard on my bench, Pat Bryant on my bench, and Woody Marks. You guys know what I think of Woody Marks on my bench.
That was a good Woody.
So I think there's a lot of talent there. It's just not talent that's assessed as high-end talent until the opportunity is there. When the opportunity is there, those guys will capitalize.
No, and I think you did balance your team out really well. You have a lot of youth on your bench, Art, but we'll get into that in a few minutes once we're done going through the teams. We'll talk about our strategy a little bit. But Dave, jackpot, coming in at number 9, and I know that's a team you really love right now with a 43% playoff chance. Older team in the league at 26.8. Matt actually has the oldest team in the league at 27.9, so he's definitely going for a win now strategy. But jackpot does currently in Dynasty have the 4th best quarterbacks, but after that, it's really kind of like mediocre. 8th running back, 10th in wide receiver, 9th in tight end. So Dave, how's Jeff feeling about his team? What do you think about his team?
This is one of my favorite drafts I've had in a long time.
Wow.
I have to be very transparent. I don't understand how in the world he's 4th in quarterbacks. I mean, when you start Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow, literally 2 top 5 ranked dynasty quarterbacks. So quarterbacks 4 for him was kind of baffling to me. I thought he got a good number 1 receiver in Tet. Tet's going to be a target monster down there. That's a solid one. Ken Walker, Jadarian Price. There are some question marks there, but certainly it's a backfield that could be relevant for the next 3 or 4 years. We know what we expect Kenneth Walker's workload to be in KC. And Jadarian Price, when Zach Charbonnet comes back, we're going to know what that backfield looks like. I don't think anything we're going to see with Helani early on really tells the tale. DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, Wandell, he gets into a little bit of an older receiver core there. I did like A.J. Brown and Tet as his top 2, but again, A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin. I mean, he's definitely got an older receiving core, and he never really got young. I mean, Jalen Naylor, Darnell Mooney. I think maybe in hindsight, he probably would have liked to take a shot on some younger receivers in some of those rounds. But overall, his starting lineup looks great. Like I say, I don't think you can do better than Daniel and Burrows as your starting quarterbacks. So I think he likes his team. I think he's going to be competitive both now and in the future. If he can address the receiving core here in 2 or 3 years. And I know he was happy with the way it went. So
No, I agree with you there, Dave. I think right now he's going to be super competitive. I mean, when I'm looking at redraft rankings, he's ranked 5th. So having those receivers like A.J. Brown, Ted McMillan's obviously great for the future, but A.J. Brown, DJ Moore, Ted McMillan, he's really deep at receiver. So it's going to be interesting how his team pans out because there's some promise there. So I see these rankings changing up a bunch throughout the year. At 10th, getting in double digit is my boy Pip, Rob Pluck. Even though he does have a 55% chance to make the playoffs this year, he has a really even-keeled team. They picked right in the middle, so it makes sense. He went for balance. He has 8th ranked quarterback, 7th ranked running backs, 5th ranked receivers, and 6th ranked tight ends. Being a victim of Shorty's double tight end move, he was able to snag Harold Fannin. His Bo Nix, Jordan Love, he took them back-to-back in the 3rd and 4th rounds, but he went young with Jeremiah Love, which is very promising for Dynasty. Started with Puka Nacua, was able to get Devonta Smith, Michael Pittman, Mike Evans, Zachariah Branch. So, I mean, his other running backs besides Love are Kyron Williams, R.J. Harvey, Tony Pollard, Alvin Kamara. So I think he has some balance there. So being ranked at 10th, but I also understand where he has a high playoff percentage, where as Dynasty might be as promising. But at number 11, I mean, Dave, it was so funny during the draft, being at the 10 turn, having these last 2 teams that we talked about with Gordo and Stevie Stephon. I mean, Stephon was throwing everything off. Sometimes he'd pick in 15 minutes. Sometimes he'd pick in 17 hours. He was all over the place. So, and I felt like them drafting right there, their teams, they went with an early stack. So they were kind of predictable. So I was really able to tailor my teams based off their picks. But Gordo coming in number 11, 45% playoff chance, younger team, 25.3 years old, but 5th ranked quarterback, 6th ranked running backs, and 12th ranked receivers, 5th tight ends. But what's Gordo got to say, Dave? Has he put a shirt on yet, or is he still staying shirtless?
No, he is well shirted up, maybe even long sleeves. You know what I mean? He's learned a lot with age. So, but I think Gordo felt good about his draft, man. And, I like his quarterbacks. Caleb Williams and Brock Purdy, I think, are a very solid starting 2. Caleb is, very potentially one of the linchpin quarterbacks of Dynasty for the next 10 years if he puts it together. He grabbed Ashton Genty, which a little bit of bad news today, but you would have to still think that there's just a tremendous amount of potential there long term. I like the Pickens pick. I think, ATN, I know he's high on him, man, and he's a big follow the money guy. He loves a Kellen Moore offense. He knows they got paid. I think ATN's great there, and especially now that we know Kamara may not start, And then, I think he was the first person to grab his 3rd starter with Kyler Murray.
Yep.
Right now, he's been named the starter. JJ's not doing anything to make the drumbeat grow for him to get on the field. So I think Kyler Murray has an opportunity here to look capable in this offense. So, and Kyler's only a couple years removed from being a top 10 quarterback. So I think he was thinking maybe there's a career resurrection thrown to a guy like Jetta. Receivers, for me, that's where he fell off a little bit. Pickens, I love as a 1. I'm not a huge Brian Thomas guy. I'm not a Quentin Johnston guy. I do love the Casey Concepcion pick.
Casey's good.
I thought Tesla was very interesting. you know,
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, and obviously Gordo also the first person to grab a defense with the Texans defense, which I think is legit. D'Amico Ryans there. I think it's a legitimate defense for a while, but he also grabbed 2 defenses. I know that Gordo likes to put pressure on people that want to stream defenses. I think he's hoping 1 or 2 other people come alongside him and roster 2 defenses on, basically we got a 20-team roster here, so you have a little room to work with. And I know he likes to put pressure on the guys that want to stream defenses. So I know that was his thought process there, but all in all, a solid squad. We'll see what comes of it.
Yeah, I think Gordo kind of went off the rails in like the 7th round with his Chuba Hubbard pick, but that's a little teaser for what I'm going to talk about later. But yeah, from that point on, it was kind of just like you could tell he was trying, but I don't know. I feel like you have to get really creative in these dynasty drafts, and I think he was like, all right, he was looking for potential outcome based on situation, which we all are, right? But I don't know. The team's a little funny to me as well.
Yeah.
But last but definitely not least, the star of the draft, Art, your boy, Stefan, Stevie Style. 49% playoff chance, so not bad, but ranked 12th at quarterback, 5th at running back. He did start with the JT 8-hand start, 11th at receiver, and 10th at tight end. So, Art, give us your thoughts. Give us Stevie's thoughts if you've gotten them in. And yeah, then we'll go into what we were thinking going into this draft.
I think Stevie's pretty happy with his draft. I think he looks rather good with Dak Prescott, but like in my estimation, Sam Darnold followed by Jalen Milroe and Carson Beck, it's kind of like a whimper as far as the quarterbacks are concerned. So I can understand where that comes from. Where I do like what he got for value were not only Rashee Rice, I've never done that before,
Rice.
and Isaiah Likely. I think as far as tight end is concerned, Rice. Yeah, I think as far as tight end is concerned, he's got one of the guys I like a lot. As far as that offense in New York is concerned, he did find a way to get both AJ Barner and Jake Tonjes in the back end. So like I think he's got some depth at tight end too. Like that really can't hurt. But like his squad is more about depth and like can they hit? I think if he has a big injury to one of his running backs, whether it's Etienne or Jonathan Taylor, I think his season's going to go south. Like that's what I'm concerned for his sake.
Yeah, no, and I think you hit the nail right on the head. The Darnold pick was definitely interesting, coming right after I picked Mendoza. Definitely, I think, better fantasy quarterbacks on the board, like a Baker Mayfield or CJ Stroud. Even Jared Goff there would have been better off for him, in my opinion. But yeah, he's definitely got some depth with the running backs in Jonah Coleman. Kenny Gainwell, I hate him, but I mean, he should be startable with how everybody's drafting him. Caleb Johnson pick was definitely rough. And then taking Carson Beck, he's going to start a few games this year. But also receivers aren't terrible, like Rashee Rice, Rome Odunze, Alec Pierce, who we'll see, but he's got Debo. He got Ted Hurst at the back end. Rashid Shaheed, now I did it to myself, could be viable. I mean, he was definitely viable before getting traded to Seattle last year, so he's got some potential there. But guys, let's get into what we were thinking going into this draft. I think this is kind of the segment I'm most excited for in this PSP, Pint Sized Pod, but I'll let you guys kick it off. I'll finish it. Dave, start with your strategy. Art got into his a little bit. We kind of skipped over you because I was jealous you're the number 1 team on Fantasy Calc. But talk about what you were thinking going into the draft, and then we'll go with Art.
No, I realize you guys completely ignored my team, and I consider it an honor to be truthful with you. I that's exactly what you're looking for, is for people to go, I don't even want to have to talk about this. So, sometimes other people make you look better than you might actually be. Now, I'm going to be very honest. I went into this draft kind of with a plan, man. I mean, I wanted to stay fairly young. I had some players that I knew I may or may not see at various points that I was definitely targeting. And I kind of had my mind made up of, let's put it this way. I wasn't sure how this draft was going to go. I thought there was a chance that it was nothing but quarterbacks for the entire first round in the Superflex Dynasty. I really thought we may see 24 quarterbacks get picked before anybody went skill position. So I went into this with an open mind of, I'm undoubtedly taking the best quarterback that comes to me in round 1. If another elite quarterback fell to me in round 2, I was probably going to grab one there, but I acknowledged from doing my mocks that I didn't usually love how my skill position players looked if I went 2 quarterbacks early. So again, sometimes other people make you look good. Drake May, the number 1 or 2 ranked player in a Dynasty Superflex startup, falls to me at 9. So I don't have to do anything other than, not be foolish in that situation and take Drake May. It doesn't, take a rocket scientist. So I grabbed May in the first, and then honestly, very surprisingly, Joe Burrow fell to me in the second. I was kind of hoping for Caleb. If Caleb would have grabbed me, I would have taken May and Caleb and been set for the next decade, never drafting a quarterback again. But, Caleb went on the turn. I saw Joe Burrow there, and it was very tempting to not grab Joe Burrow. But, I wanted a young running back, so I took Amari and Hampton there. When it came back to me at 309, there were some receivers I liked, but there was no receiver talent or quarterback that I felt like I liked better than rolling the dice on a Colston Loveland, man. I'm sure you'll get into your strategy, and you went Bowers early. Trey McBride went late second. So to be late third and see Colston still there, Ben Johnson that was his first ever draft pick, man. He took him to build this offense around. I really believe that with the Rome Odunze versus Luther Burden debate, we're going to see Colston Loveland be the number one target in this offense for years to come. Guy's 22 years old, so I went Loveland. A couple of the receivers I was looking at went there between me and my next pick. So I went Olave. I felt like I needed a one. Age wasn't as much as a concern. I felt like I needed a one for the next 3 or 4 years, and Olave was really the last guy there. And after that point, like I say, I kind of wanted to stay young, but knew I needed to at least field a solid lineup. So I went Carnell Tate in the next round, good to get the number 4 overall pick in this year's draft, my number 2 receiver. I took Scatabo, my next round. That's one that I'm thinking about. But, if Scatabo hits and they figure out how to use him properly, that's Amari and Hampton and Cam Scatabo that I hope is 4 years, 3-4 years of a viable backfield. I think, to look much further down the road than that's a fool's errand. But if I could get 3 years of those guys as my legitimate starters, I thought that was the plan. And then I just grabbed some value, man. Jamison Williams falls to me in the next round. Still a young dude who was a top 10 receiver next year, and I get him in the 7th. So to put JMO there is what was essentially my third at that point felt great. And then I knew I couldn't go much longer without a QB. And at that point, Malik Willis is in my crosshairs, and I go Malik Willis in round 8. This is fantastic, mobile quarterback. And Alex puts the first true dagger in my heart of the draft, the pick in front of me with Malik Willis. Fired off an appropriate group text between us, just telling him how much I hated him at that point. But I also knew I couldn't wait much longer on my second quarterback. And you like to think you're smarter than you are, right? So this is where I go, I'm taking Stafford here. And then in 3 rounds from now, I'm going to draft Ty Simpson. So I was able to execute on that, man. I grabbed Stafford in that round. Several rounds later, I took Ty Simpson. I think McVay has a plan, looked great in his first preseason game, which means nothing. But I do think he's going to get a crack at being the starting quarterback for the Rams at some point. And I think sitting back for a year or 2 years under one of the best pure pocket passers and learning that McVay system so that he's ready by the time he steps in, there's a plan there. Whether or not it works out, I have no idea. But, for my mind, May's my 1. I love Stafford as my 2 for the next 2 years with, Simpson is the guy that should step into that role in the future. I was able to grab Christian Watson in between some of those picks, which I love. Still younger, and will he stay healthy? I don't know, but I think he has top 12 receiver potential this season and beyond if he becomes the focal point of that offense. They paid him to do that. I grabbed Bill after that, a young running back that has a chance to seize a backfield. I think that was round 12. So I felt good there. And then I started stacking my young receivers and stuff, man. I got a Jacoby Lane on my team. I got a Caleb Douglas late. Some tried and true running backs and just, a guy I knew would get carries with J.K. Dobbins. I do think there's uncertainty with Scatabo and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. So Dobbins, I expect to get carries this year. I may need him behind Hampton, so I grabbed a J.K. Dobbins there late. I was real happy with my Terrence Ferguson pick in the 17th too, man. That's just a guy I love seeing on my bench. You're hearing so much buzz out of Rams camp on him right now, lining up all over the offense. Devontae's a little older. I still think him and Puka are the clear 1 and 2, but I do think there's room for a 3 in that offense. And I don't see why a young 2nd round overall draft pick can't be that guy. I like that pick where I got him. I got a little Tank Bigsby. I did stash a Dalton Schultz late just in case anything happens to Loveland and Ferguson doesn't have a breakout. I need a guy that's going to see targets. So there was a bit of a balance between building my team for this year and the future. I love the young core I got of Drake May, hopefully Ty Simpson, Amari and Hampton, Cam Scatabo. We're looking at Carnell Tate, Olave and Jameson Williams, I get several more good years out of. If Christian Watson hits. So I feel real good about where I'm at, man. And, I hope Caleb Douglas and Jacoby Lane can become a part of this receiving core in years to come. So I feel like I can be competitive this year, but I also feel like there is, not a whole lot of crazy stuff I need to have happen to be viable for the next 3 or 4 seasons.
No, I love it, Dave. That is, yeah, no. No, I thought you had a really good draft, and obviously Fantasy Calc did too. You pivoted where you needed to pivot, and I would say the only crazy things I was at your draft was at the very end going with like Deshaun Watson, Jalen Wright, Elijah Arroyo. I get why you went there. I'm also really mad at you about your Caleb Douglas pick in the 19th where you sniped me. That I'll get into in a little bit. But Art, give us your strategy real quick and how you feel you executed.
I'll keep it real quick. In a draft like this, it is a challenge to balance the here and now with the future. And is the future next year and the next year, or is the future 3 to 5 years? Right? It's hard to find a way to get to that world. I wanted to build around the quarterback that I knew would be consistent and be consistent now, and likely consistent for the next 3 years. Not a quarterback that I would know would be consistent for the next 5 to 10. I know that sounds a little silly, but I know what Lamar brings to the table. And I'm unlikely to draft him in any of my other leagues because I just simply don't tend to do that with Lamar. For whatever reason, there are certain players I have a built-in bias on and I don't draft them. Well, in this case, it was my shot to get a guy like Lamar. I know what he's capable of. I know what that offense is built to do. And I do think there's some serious potential there, but we've seen it done in the past. I also know what the rest of the next couple years of quarterbacks look like coming out of the NCAA. So I've got faith that I may need to draft a quarterback another day. But I'm not so concerned about that at this point because I did back him up with Jackson Dart. Now, Jackson Dart might be out of the league in like 3 minutes. Who knows? But I did back him up with Baker Mayfield. So there is a good bit of talent on my squad. I think the problem with my team is that a good bit of my talent is on my bench, right? A guy like Woody Marks, a guy like Xavier Hutchinson with opportunity, Jalen McMillan, Jack Besh, who I picked up off of waivers, Pat Bryant, Jeremy Bernard, and then into my taxi squad with Elijah Surratt and Emmett Johnson. Now, a couple things have to go right for Emmett Johnson and Elijah Surratt to be able to show their abilities. But I do know that what I see on this squad is a really solid defense, a tight end that could be the top tight end overall in Tyler Warren, who I didn't need to draft as the top. I drafted him as the 5th best tight end. And we've got a guy that is the ceiling of talent at wide receiver in Malik Neighbors. Stacked up with Jackson Dart, yes, there's potential there. Yes, things do have to fall in my favor. But I am a guy who always drafts with potential in mind. I will never draft safe players unless you're talking about the first round. And Lamar was that safe player in the first round. So I think of safety in the first round or two, and then I want to build potential thereafter and fill in the spots in the bench with guys who really are one shot away from opportunity. I think I did that well. It's certainly not the shiniest, the shiniest car on the showroom floor, but I might have the most horsepower under the hood, right? Something you can't quite see on the surface, but something that could come through later in the season. So I'm always the guy who, when I draft, never, whether it's ESPN, Yahoo, Sleeper, any league you can think of, very rarely have I ever had the best looking team coming out of the gates, but I do tend to have one of the best teams as the season finishes. So for me, it's not necessarily about the destination. It will be about the journey and the destination.
Art with the analogies, always. You can't, like, if you need a simile, if you need anything like that, go to Art because he will sum everything up for you.
Do you know why that is?
What?
That is because I have listened for the last 15 plus years of my life. I have listened to 2 of the greatest lyricists in the world, the history of the world. And I know Dave is going to love this, right? One is a group, one is a rapper. And the rapper is Lil Wayne. Okay. The man doesn't write, the man speaks. And similes are all about it, what he's all about. And the second portion of this are the OG, the gods from the start, the Wu-Tang Clan, baby.
The Woo, baby.
Art, I don't know that you need to drag those guys down with you.
All right, let's hit.
Nothing. I'm messing with you. No, hey, listen, real quick, before we move off Art's team, I've given him some grief, but I got to be honest. Lamar Jackson Dart has the potential to be, as dangerous as any top 2 quarterbacks. So there are couple question marks around Jackson Dart, sure. But if Jackson Dart hits, him and Lamar, you don't want to play on any given week. Baker Mayfield is as strong a third as I think anybody has. I do like Tyler Warren, Malik Neighbors, Luther Burden, I think a very strong young group of receivers there, and he's got a couple threes that he's going to be able to move in and out. He's going to have to address the running back position. There may be weeks where his backfield hopes for 15 carries collectively. But, outside of that, and again, I don't think there's a running back with higher upside potential than Trevion Henderson. If Ramondre
No.
Stevenson goes down, he's got he's got a top 5 back. I mean, that's clear.
Yep.
So, one or two things breaks Art's way. This team looks real dangerous. And yeah, I'll give you some props, Art. There's a hole or two, but all in all, I see the plan and there's some dangerous things there.
No, I completely
Appreciate
agree with you there, Dave. Like our like the team, like yes, like the running backs, he was like but he also waited on running backs. He wanted to make sure he got his quarterbacks, he got the tight end he was looking for, and then he built from there. But I mean, he has some really, like, the running backs are young. They're all either rookies first season. I mean, we know how he got Pacheco in the 15th round. We know how much I love him. So yeah, there's definitely a upside on his team. And I mean, that's perfect segue because that's kind of how I led my draft. I kind of went for upside. Sitting at the 110, I knew that I would have to wait for kind of the best player available to fall to me. And I had my eyes set on a couple guys as were Ashton Genty, Justin Jefferson, also looking at like Omarion Hampton, but Amon-Ra St. Brown was the guy I really hoped fell to me at the 10, doing a million mocks before this draft, and he happened to. So getting the wide receiver 3 from the past 3 seasons, I feel like that's a lot of consistency. But then after going for a safe pick in the first round, I wanted to go upside, and being in a tight end premium league, I went with Brock Bowers. I mean, this guy has shown how dominant he is in the league. I don't think I'm crass to say that he is the next Rob Gronkowski. He is the next Travis Kelce, and getting him at early in the second round, I think did help me create an edge, and I think Fantasy Calc agrees. But then still, I want to push that edge. We had a little bit of a running back run. Like the top running backs were going off the board. A lot of top receivers were going off the board. And I saw Nico Collins sitting there at the end of the third round, and I was like, hey, if I create an edge at tight end, I can create an edge at wide receiver. I have something to help put my team in position to win the championship. So I went Nico to stack with Amon-Ra, then came back looking for another running back 1. My favorite off the board with age and upside is Chase Brown, and we see that with recent upside. But at that point, I'm hurrying on quarterback and continue the trend of upside, continue the trend of dynasty. I decided in 5th round go Fernando Mendoza. Even if he doesn't start the first few games, I figured I would worry about that later. There's still some quarterbacks out on the board, and I think we talked about it a lot in F4 in the podcast this offseason, where waiting on the quarterbacks is not a bad thing. And then sitting there in the 6th round, I see Zay Flowers. So I really thought to myself, it's like, hey, I'm hurrying at running back, I'm hurrying at quarterback. I can go at this point, a Jared Goff, a CJ Stroud. But I decided to go Zay Flowers so I can have 3 star-studded wide receiver 1s, guys that all finished in the top 10 of their respective positions last year. And through the 6th round, I had 5 players that finished at 1s in their position in 2025 and the 1.1 pick in 2026. And then I just had to fill gaps. I went with Bajal Tootin, again, upside, came back, and that's where the snipe with Malik Willis happened. I figured out he will be my quarterback 1 with the rushing upside potential. Went Jonathan Brooks with the news at camp, especially since Chuba Hubbard went into 7th. I couldn't believe Brooks would be there before Hubbard. Went Daniel Jones at the 10th, so I at least have 2 starting quarterbacks that are healthy, that rush a little bit, that are viable quarterbacks for the first few weeks of the season until I have my starters hopefully set with Willis. Chris Godwin, I went in the 11th. You guys know how much I love him. And then a tight end run happened. I saw Travis Kelce sitting there. It's like, hey, I can start a tight end in my flex throughout the season this year, especially like Travis Kelce, that I could potentially see 15 and 20 points for on the year. And then just rookies, Antonio Williams, Damon Claiborne, Skylar Bell, Kevin Coleman after Dave sniped my Caleb Douglas pick in the 19th round. I went Ricky Pearsall in 22nd, just him in his IR. He could come back as wide receiver 1. Aaron Jones helped round out those running backs a little bit, a little Jaden Blue, Marshawn Lloyd, young guys that have had good news in training camp, but that I went in looking for a little bit of consistency, a little bit of balance early, and then also want to make sure that having a late draft pick, I'm able to like I said earlier, create an edge so I can have the best positional players in a couple positions. So I have a chance to fight for the championship and then
Alex,
level those with the young guys.
I have to say this. I think your plan was executed well. I think if I look at your roster from top to bottom, there's really one spot that, like, it's very obvious you had to make a sacrifice to get what you wanted for the future. And getting Nando Doza on, early made you have to get Daniel Jones. But I don't think that's a bad trade-off. Like, I don't think, like, I look at your roster and I think, like, out of anyone's roster, you have more of the guys I'd rather have on my team than anybody else's roster does. So for what it's worth, there's always one team like that in every league, right?
Yep.
You're like, maybe you didn't snipe the guy before me, but maybe you just were a step ahead of the guys that, like, didn't let him get back to me on the turn, right?
Right.
This squad, there's not a lot of holes here. Like, you really made a lot of killer picks here. Like, I'm not trying to, like, be overly, glazed too hard, but, like, there's a lot of players in this squad a lot of people should want. Like, you better be receiving the most trade offers in the league this season, because I see a lot of reasons why people would want your squad. It's what you want, right?
Well, and that was kind of my mantra throughout the draft. I kept telling myself they're not going to come back to you. They're not going to come back to you. So, like, for the Bajal Tootin pick, I would love to wait till the 9th round, but it's not going to happen. For Jonathan Brooks, same thing. I would love to wait till the 10th, 11th round, but it's not going to happen in that aspect. And once you get into the, the 12th, 13th, 14th round, you can be a little bit more conservative because guys are going to have different opinions of how they want to round out their team. But throughout, I would say, like, the 3rd to 10th, 11th round, I was like, I gotta take some guys that have major upside and they're going to help me win. And I think I showed that. So, no, I was really happy with the draft. I love the slow draft. I think there was only one pick that I kind of, like, panicked about. I love, like, looking at my phone and starting to, like, freak out and then being like, let me just put this down for, like, 5 minutes and then, like, come back to it when, like, I've actually, like, thought about it and I have a clear thought of everything that's going on in my brain. So, no, it was so much fun, guys. But we're getting into it. This Pint Sized Pod has become a full pod at this point. So let's do a quick rapid fire. I have my favorites and my worst, my favorite team, my favorite picks, and my favorite build. So I'll go through my favorites. We'll go around the table, start with Art, then Dave, and I'll come back with my least favorites. We don't have to debate. We don't have to do anything, but let's try to get this done in a couple minutes so we can wrap this up. But I'll kick it off. My top 3 favorites, my favorite team at the end of the day is Shorty. Shorty really crushed it. I mean, Fantasy Calc aligned. He got Bijan, he got Judkins, he got Blake Corum rounded out with Kalon Black, CeeDee Lamb, Lab McConkey, Matthew Golden, Jordan Addison. He did a really good job of building a very well-balanced team, and then holding off on tight ends and doubling down in premium is very bold and very sick, especially since now, like, kind of like what Art was talking about earlier, he has trade bait. Favorite pick, Christian McCaffrey at 3.7. We'll see how that pans out, but getting Christian McCaffrey in 3rd, who can always potentially be a running back 1, is never a bad pick. And then Tommy with Cam Ward at 5.7, I talked about it earlier. Like, I think that's a guy that I had my eye on. That's a guy I believe Dave had his eye on, and him going earlier just broke my heart, and that sucked. And then Tommy also had my favorite build, starting with JSN, kind of being really balanced in the first 3, and then dialing in on that depth of each position. Older running backs with the CMC, Jacobs, and then Jalen Warren. But those wide receivers are sick with the JSN, Igbuka, Waddle, great for Dynasty. And then having really good rookie receivers that were drafted early in Lemon, Denzel Boston, and DeJon Stribling. They were all drafted within the first, 45 picks of the draft. So he has a lot of promise. But go ahead, Art. Tell me what you got. A couple favorites from you, and then we head over to Dave.
All right. So my favorite team in the league, I hate to do this, is yours, Alex. It really
Thanks.
is. I like I said, there's very few holes in your squad. I think my favorite pick comes from your boy Pip. I just love seeing Harold Fannin as a tight end in a tight end premium league. Like, really, there's a guy that is going to produce a ton. Like, have you seen what Deshaun Watson has done this preseason? Have you seen Shadur? He crushes the interviews and is, like, almost the same shit as Deshaun Watson. If they're not finding Harold Fannin, they're certainly not finding Jerry Jeudy's old lame ass.
No.
Like, he doesn't look like he cares anymore. I don't know what you're doing out there, Jerry. You're looking more like a Judy than a Jerry. And the third part was what again, Alex? How much I hate my team? Is that what the third part was?
Your favorite build. Who you like your favorite, who went about, like, building their team in the best way?
As far as a favorite build, that's an interesting one. I mean, goodness. I mean, your boy Ryan Boyle always does a really good job. I mean, I don't love the fact that he took Josh Allen 1 overall, but I like his balance between his receivers and his running backs. He won't trade me Brennan Strange. I don't know why. That's a strange thing in my book, but nonetheless, he's hanging on to him like he's like a Heisman Trophy winner. But regardless, I do think his staff is the most balanced of all the squads.
No, and I think the only pick, like, he went those really running back heavy with the Derrick Henry and David Montgomery pick, but I think that's all just, I mean, but he was also able to balance that out with Parker Washington, Josh Downs, Stephon Diggs, get some guys later to balance out the weakness at receiver. So, but he's definitely going to use Derrick Henry and Montgomery for trade bait after having, or Javonte Williams too, maybe James Cook. Like, he has 4 really good running backs, so that's never a bad spot to be in. But go ahead, Dave, what you got?
So, favorite team, mine, man. That's why I drafted it. What are we doing here? Like, come on. Drake May with the 9th overall pick. Amari and Hampton and Scatterbo in the backfield.
That's illegal.
Olave, Jamison Williams, Christian Watson, Carnell Tate. And listen, Alex, Bowers in the second. I love where you took him, but we're a year away from Colston Loveland carrying the same value as Brock Bowers, and I got him 17 picks later. So
yeah, because Luther Burden can't keep his hamstring intact.
Again, a Terrence Ferguson late, a young Jacoby Lane, a young Caleb Douglas, the Matt Stafford late with Ty Simpson to back it up. Like, there was a plan. It was executed brilliantly, and I got my money on me. That's just how it goes.
I love it, Dave. I love it.
Honestly, I'm gonna just say it, that, and here's where we can lean back into Alex a little bit. But my favorite pick and least favorite pick at the same time was Malik Willis. Malik Willis in the 8th. I thought for sure I had him. You snaked him in front of me, but I believe that Malik Willis has an opportunity to be a quarterback that takes over a team. And I think everybody looks at him and thinks this guy can just run, but we've talked about it before. He was almost 80% completion in his time as a Packer, and that's over double-digit games, so it's not like a 2-game sample size. He does have the wheels. I think he's a starting quarterback in the league right now, most likely to rush for 1,000 yards.
Yeah.
You have Lamar and Jaden Daniels, but I think he's going to be forced to run more. So, I think Malik Willis could possibly be 1,000-yard rusher in addition to an almost 3,000-yard passer this year, which is how you break the game. So Malik Willis was really my favorite pick. It's just, it hurts like hell that it went 1 pick in front of me. And honestly, man, in terms of best build, I'm gonna stay with you there. You decided not to go quarterback early, which I had big questions about. You stacked value in St. Brown. You stacked value with Bowers. Nico, where you got him, and Zay Flowers. Like, that's a starting 3, not just for this year, but for several that you don't want to play. Chase Brown, and if Byshell Tootin does what we think he can, it's fantastic. You're a year away from Mendoza being viable. Now, is Mendoza Jared Goff, or is Mendoza Brady-esque for fantasy, I think, is a question that remains to be seen. I don't know that we can look at Fernando Mendoza as essentially a pure pocket passer and say we automatically put him in that upper echelon of quarterback in early in his career. But I think he's a long-term starter for you that has upside. Malik Willis as your 2, essentially your 1 at this point where you got him, I thought was fantastic. So just the fact that you held off on that first QB until round 5, we're content to get positional advantages early on. It's difficult to do in a super flex to have sort of the commitment to say, I'm doing this and I'm not coming off this plan. So, I give you full credit on that one, man. And the team looks real good in the end. So well done. But, it's not number 1 for a reason. I mean, I guess we'll just say that. That's all.
No, thanks, Dave. That's great. And honestly, thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Definitely didn't intend for this segment to be about how great my team is, but I'm happy to hear how it turned out to be that way. But all right, quick, real least favorites. My least favorite team is Gordo's team. We already talked about it, but he didn't start bad in the beginnings. Second, Genty, Caleb Williams with Brock Purdy. He got Trevor Acham with Ashton Genty. Then we also have Brian Thomas, George Pickens. But then it really fell off in the 7th with the Chuba Hubbard Chuba Hubbard picks, coming back to back with Kyler Murray, where then he was able to tie in Quentin Johnston. Casey Conception's probably going to be his wide receiver 3, but then he doesn't have much else after that. And tight ends, he's rocking Jake Ferguson and Eli Sowers, which aren't bad, but he's going to have to wait a little bit. So Gordo, I think that is my least favorite team. My least favorite picks. All right, I already told you you're my number one, but that is Lamar at the 1-5. Just with the fact of having Drake May on the board, Jaden Daniels, essentially better dynasty fantasy quarterbacks.
Let's make it very clear. I had some inside knowledge. I couldn't take Jaden Daniels at the 1-5 because you can't use 5 with him anymore. So let's just eliminate him from that part of the conversation. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, then Drake May giving Dave his number one team in his opinion. I love that art. But then Gordo brought up twice, actually, not countless. But Chuba Hubbard at the 7-12 was just a waste of a pick, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Oh, and then I also had Sam Darnold at the 5-11. I talked about that earlier. Having a bunch of other viable quarterbacks. I mean, the thing about Sam Darnold is he won a Super Bowl, but he wasn't fantasy relevant. He was, outside quarterback 2 last year with having the number 1 receiver. So, I mean, he has the talent and he's done it before, but I just think that was too early. My least favorite build would be Stevie, especially with him having the most time on the clock out of the draft. Starting with Taylor and A-Chain isn't bad, but then finishing with Rashee Rice, trading for Luther Burden, who's also going to have a slow start because he's not playing right now. And then after that, DK Metcalf, Alec Pierce, just not a good build in my opinion. But hey, he might pan out. Maybe he wins championship. I'm just talking head at this point. What you got, Art?
Well, I just have love here. That's it. I have all kinds of love. So I don't have any players I hate. I don't have any teams I hate because you know what? This league is all generated for everyone to have fun. So I'm gonna bypass that and send it right over to Dave.
I love that you took the high road. I'm not gonna do the same. Content is made when we start giving really hot takes and just start slandering good people's names. That's how we get this viewership up. But no, I gotta be honest. So I loved his first 3 picks, Muck with Gibbs, McBride, and London, but then his draft just, it's just not directions I would have gone. I'm not a big Breece Hall guy in that Jets offense. I like Tyler Shuff a lot, but Tyler Shuff was the guy that I was targeting as my 2 for Drake May. I don't think that we know enough about Tyler Shuff at this point to say he should be a clear-cut 1. Especially when you follow that up with Stroud. I liked the Jordan Tyson pick, and from a talent profile, he was probably the best receiver in the draft, but I personally took Tate ahead of him specifically because of the hamstring injury, and we're already watching it pop up. For me, that injury history in college to make him your number 2 wide receiver, I just felt like was risky, and then he goes down to Higgins, who's out, sadly, not his fault, but then you've got Cooper from the Jets, who has not had a great camp and hasn't looked fantastic. So, Gadsden as his number 2 tight end, and he took that second tight end in the 8th round, when what we're hearing is Gadsden may not even be on the field with these guys. So, I loved how he started his draft, and even the Breece pick in the 4th, I get to a degree. But after that, that was really where I thought it started to come apart for him. He's not incredibly deep at running back behind those picks, although Algier may get some great run to start the year. He's not incredibly deep at wide receiver. I think McBride's the only tight end that you need, but, he's traded away Strange already. I don't have a great feeling about Gadsden. So Muck, unfortunately, I love the high-end talent, but I just think there's a couple holes in his roster for me. A few too many, if you will. It's not just one position. I think he's a little shallow at running back, a little shallow at tight end, a little shallow at QB and receiver. So, but again, I think the draft started great, and I love his first couple picks.
Right.
So,
absolutely. No, definitely. All right, everybody. I think we had some technical difficulties. We lost Dave and Art, but thank you, everybody. Who would have thought that talking about the F4E Invitational would have taken over an hour? Just shows how much we care about this league and how excited we are about this league and how much fun we're about to have. So, like I said earlier, we are going to get some of our league members onto the pod this year. Shout out to Matt for winning the 2025. Or no, it was Jimmy. Shout out to Jimmy for winning the 2025 Jameer Gibbs X Fractor card. But make sure you like, listen, follow, share. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at Fantasy Football, the number 4, everyone. And for Art, Dave, and yours truly, F4E out.